What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another Heart Over Height episode. Today we're going to be reacting to NBA Chaos Makers 5 trade ideas to blow up the 2024-2025 season from Bleacher Report that was released today. So if you guys do enjoy this video, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're on the road to 12,000 subscribers, and comment down below what deals you agree with, what you would change, everything like that. So with that being said, let's get right on into this. So like I said, it was released today, this article. So it's just 5 trades, just literally changing a lot of players around. So first up, we have Dorian Finney-Smith to Sacramento. We have Brooklyn. They get Kevin Huerter, 2028 second-round pick, and a 2029 second-round pick. And then Sacramento gets Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, initially when I saw this deal, I hope that the Brooklyn Nets, when they do end up trading Dorian Finney-Smith, that they get at least a first-round pick. Even if it's a few years down the road, get as many picks as you kind of can that are valuable picks. You know, these days, second-round picks don't really mean too much. Of course, you have your Flyers and Jokic and Draymond Green that were second-round picks, but first-round picks are definitely more valuable than seconds. So if they can go and get Kevin Huerter in a first, I would say that's more ideal. Now, of course, I also think that they could hold on to Dorian Finney-Smith a little bit just before the trade deadline when teams get a little trigger happy to make that championship run. But let's just go off this trade right here. So, yes, Sacramento gives up Kevin Huerter 2 second-round picks. The Kings then receive Dorian Finney-Smith. So let's take a look at the Kings roster and their depth chart. So, obviously, right now we have De'Aaron, Kevin Huerter, DeMar, Keegan Murray, Sabonis. Now, you plug in Dorian Finney-Smith. I think then you shift DeMar DeRozan back to a shooting guard, and then you put Dorian Finney-Smith at the 3. You have Keegan at the 4 and Sabonis at the 5. I like that a lot more because, as you guys have known in the videos I've released in the past, the one big issue I've had with the Kings picking up DeMar DeRozan has been the spacing. I don't love how De'Aaron Fox, DeMar DeRozan, Sabonis, the spacing is not quite there. Now, of course, yes, you have Keegan who shoots a 30, but adding someone like Dorian Finney-Smith who's going to up the defensive tempo as well as spread the floor on the three-point end, because although Kevin Huerter is a good three-point shooter, he's not the defender and caliber defender that you need in this roster like Dorian Finney-Smith. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife that could be used on a handful of teams that a lot of people would enjoy. So yeah, I do like Dorian Finney-Smith in Sacramento if they can pull that off, and if they can get it for just 2 first-round picks and Kevin Huerter, I would jump at that in a heartbeat. I like that a lot for them. And then as far as Brooklyn side, again, I think that they could wait and get at least a first-round pick along with a player for Dorian Finney-Smith if they get close to that trade deadline and somebody gets a little bit trigger happy. I.e., the Lakers are kind of always a trigger happy team looking to chase names and plug somebody in. So if the Lakers get off to a slow start, or someone that's supposed to be a lot better, like we could say like Houston could be a team that could be looking at upgrading that forward position. I know they got a couple forwards over there, but the Kings in general, I think that's a good fit for Dorian Finney-Smith. I just don't know if the Brooklyn Nets are happy about 2 second-round picks and then an older vet in Kevin Huerter. Next up, we have Colin Sexton to the Magic, and this one I have not seen yet. So Orlando receives Colin Sexton. Utah then receives Cole Anthony, a 2025 first-round pick, which is most favorable from Denver or Orlando, top 5 protected, and then a 2026 second. Now, this one I like a lot for both sides. I think that Orlando gets Colin Sexton. They need a point guard. Who knows if it's Jalen Suggs, if they trust Anthony Black a little bit more, or if they need to move off and go get an actual point guard who can play make. And that's something that Colin Sexton does. He's a good defender. He can shoot the 3 ball a little bit. And you go and you get a guy that's going to have the intensity and feels like a little bit of a glue guy. Now, if you're Utah, you do this because you get a young asset in Cole Anthony, who's had a couple years in the league, but they are known for bringing players over that haven't worked in one spot and trying to make them work in another, i.e. Lauri Markkanen. Didn't work in Cleveland, didn't work in Chicago, came over to Utah, becomes an all-NBA caliber player, all-star potential player. Then you get a 2025 first-round pick. Of course, Orlando's decent, so that pick's going to be around like 18, 20s in that area. And then, of course, giving them Colin Sexton makes them a little better. But I think that this is definitely a good package for a guy like Colin Sexton. If you can get something like that, I don't know if you get that anywhere else or if you'll get more for him. And then, yeah, I like Colin Sexton's pairing alongside Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, both solid defenders, stretch the floor for the offensive end for guys like Franz and Paolo Banchero, who are still working on that three-point shot. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of this. Think it's great for both sides. Let's take a look at Orlando's depth chart here. So you obviously have Jalen Suggs, KCP, Franz, Paolo, Wendell. I think that Jalen Suggs reminds me a lot of a solid six-man of the year candidate. I do think you should start off the year by testing things out with how Suggs has developed over the offseason. Has he grown? Has he been able to get to that playmaking spot? And has that three-point shot developed enough to where you can really rely on him to compete, where they can space the floor? Because that was their biggest struggle in that Game 7 against Cleveland, was that three-point shot just isn't there where a team like Cleveland, who can just stack the paint, and that's what they're known for guys like Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. Then you bring in a guy like Colin Sexton, who does help space the floor. KCP helps space the floor, so you can let Paolo and Franz go to work. You can even go and bring Jalen Suggs off the bench so he's a bigger guard, or swap them if you do need a longer, more athletic guard than Colin Sexton. So I do like this. That gives them options, and then they get rid of a guy who's coming off their bench who they have too many guards here anyways, and then you get a guy who is a solid role player in the league who definitely can just play his game and kind of fit in where he needs. He's willing to adjust his game as well. So I like that a lot for both sides. Next up, we have Tari Eason going to Philly. This is after December 14th, of course. Houston receives KJ Martin, 2026 first-round pick, least favorable from Houston, LA, or Oklahoma City, and then a 2028 first-round pick. Philly then receives AJ Griffin and Tari Eason. I like this deal a lot if you're Philly, because you get AJ Griffin, who's kind of being thrown around a little bit in the league, and I don't know why he's not given more opportunity and seen as more of a high caliber player, or sought-after player, I should say. And then Tari Eason, who's a solid player, just kind of losing his minutes there in the rotation as Houston is just developing and getting better overall. So for Philly, getting a guy like AJ Griffin, I think that adds a lot of depth to your roster. And then, of course, Tari Eason as well. So Philly, let's take a look at their depth chart here. You got Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre, Paul George, Caleb Martin, and Joel Embiid. Now, the one spot that you could see him, Tari Eason or AJ Griffin fitting in would be this power forward position. I think that's kind of open right now. I think you could see Caleb Martin being a guy that comes off the bench. Could see him starting, of course. I think that genuinely the power forward position, so you go and you get a guy like Tari Eason who could potentially start from you. New situations can always cause for players to just play better, especially on a winning team. Obviously Tari Eason's been on Houston for a little bit now where they haven't necessarily been in that win now mode. Of course, right now they're in that, but they brought in some guys, Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, who are kind of taking his minutes there. So he goes off to a squad that's competing for a championship literally this season. That's why they went and got Paul George and got Caleb Martin so they can compete right now. And there's some solid minutes on this bench here where this bench is looking kind of thin. So you go and you get two guys that really are solid for you. And then Houston, of course, you get KJ Martin, who used to play for you, and then you get the first-round picks. That's ideal for Houston as well, because they're not quite there yet, and then you might be able to end up getting a third team involved where you flip these two first-round picks for then a solid player that isn't necessarily happy in their current situation near that trade deadline. Next up, we have Lauri Markkanen to San Antonio. Now, this is extremely interesting, of course, because you have 7'4" Victor Wembanyama, and then you have a guy like Lauri Markkanen who also stretches the floor. So they would be insane on stretching the floor. Everyone would be able to shoot the three ball. Now, this would be San Antonio getting Lauri Markkanen, Utah receiving Branham, Keldon Johnson, Atlanta's 2025 first-round pick from the DeJounte Murray trade, Charlotte's 2025 first-round pick, lottery protected, and then if not conveyed, turns into the 2 second-round picks the following 2 years. Atlanta's 2027 first-round pick, and then San Antonio's 2029 first-round pick. this is a match made in heaven if you're Utah. You get, again, another guy who has shown potential in the league, just hasn't really put together what we thought he could have been. And then you get a few first-round picks in this deal. You know, you get 2025, 1, 2, 3, 4 first-round picks with some protections. Could end up being a couple seconds as well instead of 4 firsts. So it could be 3 firsts and 2 seconds. I still think that's a solid haul for somebody like Lauri Markkanen. Especially there's been rumors that he doesn't necessarily want to go to Golden State. There's, which we can discuss in a second here. But let's go over that depth chart. So you have Chris Paul, Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan. I think he would then move to the bench here. And then you'd start Lauri Markkanen. Of course, you're not going to pay that guy that kind of money. And then, or someone like Harrison Barnes can move from the bench. And then I think in the future, Stephon Castle could be looking to take over a point guard-esque role from Chris Paul as he just grows and everything. But I don't think this season that's going to be it. I think they're going to ride with him coming off the bench for the first season. This makes them a solid playoff team. I thought that they were going to already take a pretty big, not massive jump, but a decent jump in the standings, just because you went from bottom of the league to adding vets like Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes. You draft Stephon Castle. Those guys have, the younger players, Devin Vassell, Trey Jones, and Victor Wembanyama, have taken a year to really develop. So you're going to see a decent jump already. It's just Lauri Markkanen is, like I said, all-star caliber player. He's an all-NBA caliber player, kind of guy that you want on this roster, because you're going to have, we're getting into a league where everyone is tall, everyone can shoot, and everyone can space the floor. So why not throw in another one to add to Victor Wembanyama? Also, on defense, they're going to be super long. And although Lauri's not the greatest defender, having that long length definitely helps them on that defensive side. And then Utah, just in rebuild mode at that point. And you get Keldon Johnson. I think that's a win-win. Last but not least, we do have LaMelo Ball to the Golden State Warriors. Now, a lot of people thought on draft night when Anthony Edwards went number 1, they were like, LaMelo should go number 2 instead of James Wiseman. But then you had Curry, Clay, LaMelo, weird lineup right there, right? In this trade, Charlotte gets Moses Moody, Pods, Andrew Wiggins, 2026 first-round pick, 2027 first-round pick swap, 2028 first-round pick, 2029 first-round pick swap, 2030 first-round pick, and then that will convey. So you get 3 first-round picks, 2 first-round pick swaps. You get a young player in Moses Moody who really hasn't had an opportunity to prove himself too much. You get a solid guy who has already started to prove himself in Pods. And then you have Andrew Wiggins, of course. And Andrew Wiggins is there more for the money. He would probably get bought out or something like that, or just ride out his contract. And if you're Golden State, you get LaMelo. I think overall, I like this a lot for Charlotte. I've said if LaMelo has another injury where he's not going to play at least 60-ish games this year, you should think about moving off of him. The tall, lanky guards, it's just not working for you in Charlotte. He's not the guy because he's not on the court. So if you can get a haul like this, where you're again, of course, again in rebuild, but Pods, he'll be a great fit alongside Brandon Miller because they both can stretch the floor. You get Moses Moody so you can really test out what he can actually do. And then you get a solid vet to help lead Brandon Miller, along with all these first-round picks, 3 first-round picks and a couple of first-round pick swaps, especially as Curry's aging. So as we're getting into this 2030 area, or 2029 area where Curry will be 38, 39, that's pretty smart if you're Charlotte. So let's look at Golden State Warriors depth chart. Right, they would lose Pods, they would lose Wiggins, they would get LaMelo. So LaMelo would probably play the 2 area. So then you would probably start Buddy Hield, or if you have Kuminga. Now that's another thing, is Golden State not giving up Kuminga in this deal is probably huge. So you might run Kuminga at the 3. So you have Curry, LaMelo, Kuminga, Draymond, and Trace Jackson Davis. That's a solid starting 5. Is it fantastic? Defensively, there's some issues there for sure. Of course, defense being anchored by Draymond, but Steph Curry and LaMelo, not the greatest defenders. Also, both having some ankle issues does definitely bother me a little bit. But if you are Golden State, you are going after just making a change after Klay Thompson. LaMelo's a good shooter. He's a good playmaker. Overall would be solid. I'd like to see what he could do with Curry, because Curry's great off the ball. LaMelo's good on the ball and can get the ball to those open players. Him and Draymond in a pick and roll would be very nice, very solid. And he'd be really good with Trayce Jackson-Davis. So overall, I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of these trades. I actually really enjoyed most of them. There were a few that I was like, not necessarily blockbuster, like they were saying, shake up the league. Like Tari Eason going to Philly, I don't think that necessarily shakes up the league and it creates chaos. But LaMelo Ball to Golden State for sure does. Colin Sexton to Orlando, I like that a lot. Not necessarily a chaos one, because you're not seeing a superstar being moved or anything. Lauri Markkanen, though, to San Antonio, very solid trade. And Dorian Finney-Smith to Sacramento, I mean, that's a good, solid move, not necessarily a blow up the league kind of move. So, all right, guys, if you did enjoy this video, please leave a like on the video. Comment down below whether you agree, what you disagree with, all that. And then, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because we're on the road to 12K. So it's been another Heart Over Height, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.